Welcome to Aging Insights. I'm Grace Egan, Executive Director of the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. Our mission is to promote policies and programs that enable seniors to live with independence and dignity in their communities. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging to provide information and resources to boomers, seniors, and caregivers. We've all heard about identity theft, but often it's not real until you or a loved one is a victim. Today we're going to talk about the ways to prevent identity theft and what you can do if you are a victim. My guests today include Jim Wilcox, Assistant Vice President of Risk Administration for the Affinity Federal Credit Union, and Steve Lee, Director of the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs that's within the Department of Law and Public Safety. Thank you both for joining us today. It's a very big topic, so I really just want to jump into many of the questions. Jim, I understand since risk management is your issue for the Affinity Credit Union, that you often speak to different groups about the ways to prevent theft. So let's begin with what exactly identity theft is.
Okay. Well, identity theft occurs when someone uses your personal identifying information, your name, your social security number, maybe your credit card number, and they use this without your permission. And in doing so, commit crime or some other form of fraud.
So it sounds like it's very widespread. There's not just one type of identity theft.
There's various types, for sure. Credit card, debit card, even having somebody take your information off of your check could ultimately be ultimately construed identity theft.
And so I guess there are a number of ways that people can prevent it, even though there are so many different types of identity theft.
There are, yes.
So when you do a program, and I'm presuming you do community programs.
Yes, we do.
What do you tell people? What are the tips you give them?
Well, typically, and identity theft is large, and because it's large, the level of sophistication in terms of the information that's stolen from people is very vast. I mean, we find that people's information are stolen out of their garbage cans. People's information can be stolen through a telephone call where somebody calls and tries to solicit information from the person they're calling. We also can get into the sophisticated world of computer crime, where we find people stealing your information by hacking personal computers or through sending emails that may contain some kind of a phishing component. So when we speak to the groups, one of the things we try to show them is that this level of sophistication is very vast.
Right.
And so as a result of that, the ways that one has to go about protecting themselves needs to be fairly broad and wide sweeping.
So I think you've touched on a couple of things. There's something that a person can do personally, and then there are some things that we really can't control.
That's correct.
And so I'm thinking of, the garbage situation.
Right.
If you separating out, maybe it goes into recycling, maybe it's ripping it all up, cutting it up, shredding it.
I think the thing that the average person needs to pay attention to, and this would be indicative of especially the elderly, you get many pieces of mail every day, and many of those are credit card offers. And of course, those credit card offers are dangerous in the wrong hands. So a real quick piece of advice would be to tell people that if you're receiving mail and you're getting credit card offers, especially the ones you didn't ask for, those are the types of pieces of mail that you definitely want to separate, and you don't want to just throw those in the garbage without doing some sort of destruction. Tear them up, rip them up in little pieces, because if it does get thrown in the garbage, somebody can take and modify that and then use it to obtain credit in your name.
So there are ways when someone's in a store. I mean, we always tell seniors not to give anybody their Social Security number or their Medicare number, because oftentimes they're the same number, and a couple of other things. So what do you tell people when they're going to an ATM, or what are the suggestions you have?
Well, I mean, in terms of ATMs, the number one rule in there is to never go to an ATM unless you're the only one that's there, for starters. That if you happen to go into a vestibule where there's more than one person and you want to use that ATM, we would discourage it. because you never know. And of course, the problem that we have with ATMs nowadays are these devices known as skimmers. The average person probably wouldn't even recognize that an ATM had a skimmer placed on it unless they had, knowledge of how ATMs operate. Many institutions have devices for themselves that might let us know these things have been tampered with. But in this day and age, ATMs are all over. They're not just at banks. They're
True.
at the 7-Elevens, the Wawas, the what have you. And so one of the things we would tell people about ATMs is not only don't go to one that's operated, but if you're really concerned, don't necessarily use ATMs that you're not familiar with. Because in this day and age, it's so easy for somebody to put one of these on.
A fake ATM.
Sure, exactly.
Interesting.
Yep.
I was thinking of another example when you were speaking about, obviously somebody can look over your shoulder. A lot of big stores have ATMs. But I was thinking when I'm trying to grab my thought back, when you're purchasing something online, some of the companies keep your data.
Right, and so
don't.
when we talk about the types of identity theft that you would have a difficult time controlling, anybody who takes your credit card information typically is going to store that.
Oh, really?
And we've all heard, absolutely, and we've all heard in recent media that there have been a number of targeted breaches at retail establishments and what have you. And so it's very possible that you can be extremely careful and still find yourself at the end of being an identity theft victim without realizing it. The shoulder surfing that we used to talk about a lot in previous days.
So is that somebody looking over your shoulder?
That's exactly what it is. Shoulder surfing is somebody looking over your shoulder.
I'm not good at that.
That's okay. But once upon a time, that was a serious threat at ATMs.
Yeah.
Now the bigger concern with shoulder surfing is that where you might have people who have their iPads, their laptops, their Kindles and whatnot, if they find themselves out in public using those to go to like banking sites and what have you, those people could look over your shoulder and capture just enough information to make you a victim. So we would discourage that too.
We didn't talk about this, but I know there's a difference between a debit card and a credit card.
That's right.
So, and in some instances, the debit card usually has a PIN.
Correct.
Which sort of implies a little bit more of a security piece, but I'm not so sure if that's true.
Well,
because it can get into your whole account.
Yeah, credit cards can have PINs too. That depends on you and your institution, what you choose. The big difference between credit cards and debit cards is with credit cards, you're borrowing money from the institution. A debit card is attached to your account or accounts. So obviously, from a standpoint of somebody stealing that information and getting it, with a credit card, you may end up getting a nasty letter from your institution saying you've overdrawn your limit. But with a debit card, if somebody has stolen that information, they're actually taking money directly out of your account. And if that's money that you're planning on using to pay bills with, that can become very problematic very quickly.
I probably mentioned this when we were talking, and I do want to get to what you do when you're actually a victim, but even I wrote a check to a utility company, and the utility company contacted me to say, hey, we didn't get the payment. It was a reputable utility company, so they were billing me for 2 months. And then I realized that no, the check wasn't canceled. However, on my checking account statement, always good to check your statements, I'm sure that's a tip you probably tell people, there were other purchases in other states using an automatic funds transfer number to my checking account. So my bank and I straightened it out, and my question was, how did this happen?
And very easily, that's one of the problems we have with checks in this day and age. You've got a check that has your bank routing number on it. It's got your account number, and usually it'll even have the check number, which is sometimes how you can tell exactly what check it was that led to the crime. That's very difficult in this day and age if you're going to continue to use checks. One of the things that I would encourage people to think about is maybe speaking to their financial institution about a bill pay methodology. Because this way, if nothing else, it's not your account that's exposed. It may be the institution's, and where it's electronic, the chances of problems might even be reduced even more. So, I think checks were probably important once upon a time, but they're slowly starting to go by the way of so many other things. And I would encourage people to either pay by electronics or go through their bank's payment methods, so that the fewer checks are out there, the better your chances are not being victimized like you were.
Right. Well, as I said, there are so many things that we talked about that you can control, and there are things that you can't control.
Right.
Whether it's a large box store where they had your number and they were hacked or whatever. So, and I guess I really want to get into how would someone know their identity was stolen?
Well, realistically, and this is sad, most people who are victims of identity theft don't find out until they're in the middle of what I would call life crisis. Somebody needs to buy a car, somebody needs to buy a house, they run a credit report, and the next thing you know, they're being told that, well, we can't give you your credit because you've got these series of problems here. And the people are surprised because they're like, well, wait a minute, I know what my credit report looks like. What are you telling me?
Right.
And so all too often, they don't find out until they're at a point in time, or even using a debit card or a credit card and walking up to make a purchase of some kind and finding out that it's being declined because your institution, for some reason or another, has blocked the card. And it may very well be because either a credit limit has been exceeded or a balance in a checking account has been exceeded. So sadly, more often than not, the average person finds out they're an identity theft victim at a precarious time.
Right.
And so certainly that's going to be something that you're going to want to proactively try to prevent.
I was speaking with a woman the other day who said that she didn't know that someone had stolen her husband's identity, and that in fact her husband and her son had the same name and middle initial. So not only did it impact her husband, it also impacted her son. So I do think that, there's some real issues here.
There are.
But, Steve, I really know that the division is very involved in this work. And so is identity theft a crime besides being a nuisance?
Absolutely. Identity theft is definitely a crime. I mean, there are various different statutes that local authorities or state authorities or federal authorities can use to fight identity theft. But one of the things that we tell people is that the identity thieves and scammers and fraudsters are getting so sophisticated that a lot of times they're a few steps ahead of law enforcement. So it really is important for seniors and really for everybody to make sure that they take the steps to prevent identity theft in the first place. Protect your social security number. Don't respond to phishing emails.
Can we describe what a phishing email is?
A phishing email essentially, and it's PHISH.
Right, as opposed to F.
Exactly.
Right.
And essentially a phishing email is an email that a person may receive that requests certain information. So the whole purpose of the email, which either asks you to respond directly or to click on a link, is to try to get access to your social security number. Essentially, it's someone, usually being an imposter, posing as someone you trust,
bank,
a business.
a doctor.
Exactly. Trying to get your information so that they can use it to steal your identity.
Okay, so it's not always, I will say it's sort of obvious when it's somebody indicating that they're a prince or somebody who's captured in another situation and needs your money or your whatever. So, the Nigerian prince, I'm really sorry to label it that way. But nevertheless, so sometimes the phishing emails are a little more sophisticated than that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, the folks were getting emails from Nigerian princes and other people asking for help. These days...
That'd be a better label than that, but I'm sorry.
No, these days the emails appear to be from your utility company. They appear to be from your credit union or your bank or your utility company, and they're asking you for your social security number or other information. So,
and there's no reason for them to have that number.
Absolutely. That's actually information they may have already. There's no reason for them to be asking you by email.
You agree?
And I do agree. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that has made identity theft grow is the fact that the emails that are being sent out are very convincing. Yeah, many times they're coming from institutions that you're familiar with, but sometimes they will tug on your heartstrings.
Right.
The person who gets an email that their son or daughter or grandson or daughter is under arrest and they need bail money and these things. And we can't, when I go out and I talk to the public about this, the number one rule is to pay attention to emails.
Sure.
And unless you know who that email is coming from and you are absolutely certain of who it's coming from, delete it. Because God forbid you click on that link.
Right.
And what you may, in fact, be doing is downloading a Trojan or some kind of malware
Right.
onto your computer.
Right.
So the link that Steve mentioned, that's a critical component in prevention of identity theft. But the bad guys are definitely smart enough to know how to pull on the various parts of the public to try to get you
Sure.
to part with that information. And you just need to be ahead of them by recognizing that maybe this is intentionally being done to steal my ID.
Right. So it's one thing to open an email, but the problem is if you actually click on that link. So I'm just curious, Steve, how prevalent is identity theft in New Jersey or even nationally?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue. I think over 17 million people are victims of identity theft every year.
Across the country.
Across the country, nationally. And according to the FTC, New Jersey, among all the states, is ranked 17th in the number of complaints concerning identity theft. So people in New Jersey are getting victimized. They're getting targeted, they're getting victimized. Obviously, we have quite a sizable senior population.
Are seniors more vulnerable?
And seniors are especially vulnerable because a lot of times, they're not as sophisticated concerning technology as others. So they may see an email that appears to be from PSE&G or a bank. They may respond to certain emails, whereas someone who's a little bit more sophisticated as to technology may know to delete it immediately.
I was going to say, reports are that about 60 to 65% of all seniors are using technology. They are on computers, they're on websites. So it is, and I think as the demographics change, there'll be even more seniors that are really
Right.
online. So.
And the fraudsters, they know that. So
They do.
instead of knocking on doors, instead
Right.
of sending mailings, a lot of times they're
Right.
sending emails.
Right.
And
We won't see the driveway scams as much. We'll see online scams.
I
Remember
think
when they
that's-
were coming to...
I think that's right. The driveway scams are still happening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But email scams are a lot more cost effective for the bad guys. They can send thousands of emails in the blink of an eye, and they just need a few people to respond, and it's worth it to them.
In New Jersey, what should someone do if they're a victim?
If someone's a victim, first, they should protect their assets. So they should cancel their credit cards, they should check their credit reports, and then they should report it to law enforcement right away.
Okay, so let's review for a second how someone checks their credit report.
Okay.
Okay.
There are three major credit agencies, and I believe that a website like freecreditreport.com
Is real.
it is real, and it gives federal law requires that these credit reports are available to consumers, and so you can request all three credit reports at one time. You can stagger it over a year, but you as a consumer can go to this website and receive a credit report for free. And what consumers should do if they've either been victimized or they think they've been victimized, or if you just are conducting a regular check,
Right.
is make sure you're checking these credit reports, that there are no unexpected debts and things like that. And you can also ask the credit agencies themselves to put alerts on your account, which can be tremendously helpful to consumers.
Alerts?
And I know when I talk to the public, if you're getting a copy of your credit report, it'll obviously show you what your balances and what have you are with your various creditors. But I can't stress enough that they should also make sure they pay attention to the inquiry page.
The inquiry page?
It's an inquiry page.
Okay.
Every credit report, it ends with a list of various places that have
that's right.
inquired on your credit. So maybe what you're going to find in that list is a company or a name of an outfit that you're not familiar with. And you can say to yourself, well, gee, why would they be on my credit report? Maybe their account hasn't been opened in your name yet, but maybe that little piece of information that there was an inquiry done might be all that it takes for you to know that, gee, I need to call that company. And the good thing about that list is, and I believe this is in almost every case from my experience, they'll not only list the company and the date of the inquiry, but there'll be a telephone number, usually toll-free right there, so you can call and say, hey, I happened to look at my credit report. I saw there was an inquiry. I'm not familiar with your company. What's that all about?
Right.
And maybe prevent yourself from becoming a victim.
So that's very helpful. So the first tip, Steve, that you were talking about was to protect your assets.
Right.
So by canceling different things and by checking your credit report. What else should someone do?
The next thing that I mentioned is contact law enforcement.
Okay.
And that serves a couple of purposes. One, law enforcement may be able to get your money back. If it's a localized crime, law enforcement, they may have heard of a particular scam and may have some insight into it. So I think that's the next step. In addition to that, if it's more of a federal issue, it's a bigger issue, law enforcement, they can refer the case. And they can also tell you just what the trends are. Like, what are the types of scams that are facing your town or your community. And that's important as well. A lot of times, seniors or anybody really should contact law enforcement if they think that they're being victimized. If they think that something is real, a lot of times they can get verification one way or the other because law enforcement has heard about scams that have already appeared in a town or community.
I think sometimes people are hesitant, they're not sure if it's a crime, so it's interesting that you say even if you're not sure if it was really a crime, sometimes people are embarrassed, sometimes they don't want other family members to be concerned as well, so I think there are a lot of reasons to really reach out, and we were talking before, I think you both mentioned the idea of getting someone within your close network to actually help you straighten things out.
Right, and one of the things we tell seniors all the time is if you're victimized, don't be embarrassed. Don't just keep it a secret.
Right.
Because, I get those same types of emails in my inbox. And, it's not uncommon for people, of all ages, all backgrounds, people that are very, very intelligent and accomplished, they'll fall for these scams as well. So don't be embarrassed, don't be shy, report it to law enforcement, and if you need help, ask for it. Ask for help from your friends or family members that may be able to help you navigate certain websites, that may be able to get you a credit report if you're not familiar on how to do that, or to report it to law enforcement. I think that the more people that are involved in someone's life, if you bring more people in, they can tell you whether it's a scam or not. More heads, thinking about something are better than one.
I even do that in my office.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get an email and I say to the deputy director who also does this show sometimes, does this look real?
Right.
And the two of us have this conversation because you can't always tell.
Right, and then if the two of you, you're like, I think it kind of looks real, you'll get to talk to the third person and fourth person, and that'll help. And we find that helps. So we tell people, don't keep this a secret. A lot of people are being victimized. It's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Jim, I think you wanted to add something.
And I started to say, his comment about keeping things a secret is important because that's a red flag. You may actually be targeted, and the people who are targeting you may insist upon anonymity, secrecy. They don't want you to tell anybody.
You really
and quite
won
frankly,
this lottery.
Right, and so the minute you hear that, that in itself, to somebody like me, would definitely tell me that maybe you need to turn around and definitely reach out to a family member, law enforcement, and what have you, because when you stop and think about it, why would somebody go out of their way to want to make sure that you didn't tell anybody about this email, this conversation, what have you, So I just wanted to stick that point in there, because I know of instances where, especially with the elderly, where they've been contacted by telephone, and one of the things the perpetrator has done is instructed them, now, in order for us to complete this deal or you to get the money, you can't tell anybody, you got to keep it just between us, and that situation to me would warrant a little more investigating.
That's a red flag.
Absolutely is.
That's a red flag. So I just want to kind of go back. So I know we throw around the word law enforcement, and I mentioned this on the phone to you. So your suggestion is local law enforcement. And, and I always think of the county prosecutors. But, so, I mean, do you go up the chain of command, so to speak, or do you start with your local law enforcement and maybe the Federal Trade Commission website, which I understand has suggestions about how to write letters to resolve different things like that?
Sure. I would start with local law enforcement because they will know what's going on in your community, in that town. So start with your local police. Start with your county prosecutor's office. And they can always, and I know from experience from talking to many folks that they're getting barraged with complaints and reports of these types of crimes going on all the time. So they know what's
Right.
going on.
Right.
And they can refer, a victim to federal law enforcement or to state law enforcement. In addition to that, we tell people, refer these things to us at the Division of Consumer Affairs, to the Federal Trade Commission, because, there are plenty of resources that are available to people that have been victimized. And we can also spread the word. If we're hearing about many instances of people getting victimized with a particular scam, I think you mentioned the grandparent scam in the past, and so we can tell people, hey, like we're hearing about this in Bergen County, in Hudson County, in Monmouth County, and we can spread out word to other counties as well. So it's important, for everyone. This is a big problem, and so
Yes,
the
well,
more people
talk
that are
about that.
kind of communicating and telling us what's going on and telling the FTC what's going on, they can spread the word for us in the state and FTC nationally.
So is there a 1-800 number or something that works well for the Division of Consumer Affairs?
They can call us at any time at 973-504-6200.
Say that again. 504?
It's 973-504-6200. 6200, or they can check our website at njconsumeraffairs.gov. They can file an online complaint with us if they've been victimized, and we also have resources available for people so that they can determine whether they've been victimized in the first place, or they can kind of learn how they can prevent being victimized by identity theft.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and that's why I wanted to talk about prevention today as well as resolution. I'm curious, do victims have the right to press charges?
Victims do. Under the Identity Theft Protection Act, that's a law in New Jersey, if someone's been victimized by identity theft, local law enforcement must take a police report. And that law also imposes various restrictions on businesses as well, and provides instruction to businesses, so that if there is a data breach, businesses are required to report that to the state police, and ultimately that information comes to us and to law enforcement authorities. So we tell consumers, check our website at njconsumeraffairs.gov, know your rights, and do everything that you can to prevent being victimized. And folks, like Jim at the Affinity Credit Union, they're working hard to make sure that, on a local level and on a credit union by credit union, bank by bank level, they're working to protect people as well. And so there are a lot of resources out there that are available to people. They just need to take advantage of it.
Now, I think that's an important message that we really want to get out there. So I appreciate you being with us today, and I would like to say, it's really wonderful to know that there are so many resources out there for somebody who is a victim. So I think that it's important, and for those of us who feel that loved ones or neighbors are being victimized, I think it's important. So I'd like to thank you both again for being our guests today and for sharing your time with us. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. To give us feedback on this show or to sponsor future Aging Insights programs, please go to our website at www.njfoundationforaging.org, or you can call our office, which might be easier, at 609-421-0206. We want to remind you to find out about senior services in your area, to contact your county office on aging. You will see a listing of their numbers on our website, or you may want to call the state hotline at 1-877-222-3737, and they will connect you with your county office on aging. Thank you for watching this episode of Aging Insights, and remember, aging is everyone's business.